Welcome to this explainer. I'm so glad you're here with us. We're diving right into a truly wild chain of events happening inside the Manistee Fire Department. We're going to literally map out the exact paper trail. We're talking warnings, internal emails, and the independent audits that dragged the city into its current administrative crisis. And you know what's crazy? We can trace exactly how internal alarms and one fateful Facebook post that got investigator John Dodson involved snowballed into full-blown state investigations. We'll be looking directly at the dates, times, and direct quotes, especially focusing on how the fire department administration completely failed to respond to their own fire show quotes. It's quite the ride. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the internal warnings, administrative roadblocks, the independent audit, the escalation with whistleblowers, and wrap up with the state fines and public fallout. Starting off with Section 1, the internal warnings. So, late February 2026, right? That's when the alarms really started sounding. Looking at the timeline, on February 21st, exactly at 5:17 p.m., a department member, designated in the documents as FW-1, reaches out directly to Mayor Jermaine Sullivan. They're just asking for an in-person meeting. Simple enough, right? Well, the mayor initially agrees, but then backtrack. On February 24th at 1:44 p.m., the mayor explicitly declines the meeting, basically telling FW1 that any operational or labor issues absolutely must be routed through Fire Chief Thomas Herndon or City Manager William Gamble. But the very next morning, February 25th at 8:32 a.m., FW1 pushes back. They state that going through those exact internal channels was the whole problem, because their complaints were just being completely dismissed by leadership. And this right here, this perfectly illustrates the turning point. On February 26th, Mayor Sullivan replies with this absolutely crucial directive. Quote, "If you believe policies or laws have been violated by City Manager Gamble or Fire Chief Herndon, please provide your concerns in writing so they can be reviewed for the proper procedure." This exact quote is huge, guys. It establishes the written record and literally sets the rest of this entire timeline into motion. The personnel were told to put it in writing, so they did exactly that. Moving on to Section 2, administrative roadblocks. So here is where we hit a massive roadblock. Look at the stark contrast on this slide. The administration was routinely pushing out these public statements, what we've been calling their fire show quotes, all about safety, proper protocol, and open communication. Their officially stated position was that all friction had to be addressed strictly through their internal channels. But the written record provided by FW1 paints a totally different picture. FW1 documented that when they brought policy violations directly to City Manager Gamble, he verbally replied, quote, "That is not in your lane to bring up or be looking into." Wow. The administration simply didn't respond to their own fire show quotes when directly challenged. It's a classic catch-22. You have to report internally, but the second you do, you're told to stay in your lane. Which brings us to Section 3, the independent audit. Since internal channels were completely shut down, the conflict was bound to spill over, and it did. Following a specific, highly critical Facebook post made by a concerned citizen that finally drew some outside attention, John Dodson, the lead investigator for Operational Integrity Solutions, got involved. He stepped in to look at the department's big push for a regional fire and EMS district. On April 13th, he dropped a technical deficiency audit regarding this regional proposal, and man, the findings were severe. We're talking significant deficiencies in clinical oversight, fiduciary projections that were basically masking internal operational realities, and major regulatory alignment issues with state fire safety standards. Essentially, the audit claimed that while leadership was busy pitching this shiny $3.4 million regional expansion, the core city operation was literally crumbling from the inside out. Well, just 2 days later, on April 15th, Fire Chief Thomas Herndon catches wind that this audit had actually been forwarded by a union member to a state representative for review. As you can guess, the chief immediately drafted this official letter you see here on city letterhead, directed straight to the local union leadership. Now, what's really fascinating here is that in his letter, the chief doesn't actually dispute the hard facts of the audit. Not at all. Instead, he writes this. He states he's concerned that the, quote, tone and substance of this document present career fire departments, professional staffing models, and organized labor in a manner that may be interpreted as adversarial or dismissive. See what's happening? He was highly focused on how this independent safety audit was going to alter the public and political perception of the fire service. Let's look at Section 4, escalation and whistleblowers. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer speed of cause and effect. It is staggering. Let's look at the exact dates and times. At 9 a.m. on April 16th, a formal notice of whistleblower protection is served to the city manager. Fast forward to late that exact same afternoon, Chief Herndon issues an emergency suspension of FW1. And get this, why were they suspended? For a Facebook repost that they made all the way back on March 4th. No way, right? This naturally triggered a massive response, and by April 19th at 3:20 p.m., all of these investigative records were blasted out to county supervisors, village presidents, and the media. The whole shebang. The specific document that sparked this crazy rapid escalation was a formal notice from John Dodson to City Manager Gamble. Dodson made it crystal clear that his review had identified suspected violations of law. He explicitly invoked the Michigan Whistleblowers Protection Act, putting the city on notice that taking any adverse employment actions against department members who participated in the audit would expose the city to significant litigation. He was laying down the law. And folks, this creates a glaring contradiction. Think about it. The chief practically begged for professional communications in his April 15th letter. Yet, just hours after a whistleblower notice hits the desk, leadership suddenly digs up a 6-week-old social media repost to justify an emergency suspension of the exact same personnel who had been begging for a simple in-person meeting back in February. You literally can't make this stuff up. Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, State Fines and Public Fallout. Remember Chief Herndon's April 15th letter to the union we talked about? Well, in it, he heavily emphasized that communications with state policymakers must accurately reflect the, quote, shared values of the professional fire service. And obviously, that inherently means a shared value of safety. He was super concerned that the audit made them look bad on the safety front. But the irony here, it's just astounding. Exactly 7 days after the chief asserted those shared safety values to the union, MIOSHA, that's the State of Michigan Enforcement Division for Workplace Safety, conducts an unannounced on-site inspection. This is April 22nd. The result? The city of Manistee was officially cited and fined for actual physical safety violations regarding their N95 respiratory fit testing. So, in a wild twist of fate, the outside audit was suddenly validated right there by state regulators. Then, at a May 6th City Council meeting, the city manager tries to reassure the public. He states that any departmental vacancies were just standard structural shifts being managed smoothly via attrition. But we know from the timeline that this isn't the whole story, is it? FW1 had just been placed on an emergency suspension, and shortly after this council meeting on May 17th, the first female firefighter-paramedic in the city's entire history officially processed her exit and resigned. So it wasn't just natural attrition, it was an exodus following an administrative crackdown. During that very same May 6th meeting, a council member pointed out that city funds are quickly drying up, stating that 3 years from now, the council is going to face some very critical decisions. So, I'm going to leave you with this. How can a city council navigate complex, multi-million-dollar regional fire proposals and tightening budgets if the internal paper trail shows a clear pattern of ignoring warnings, suspending whistleblowers over social media posts, and getting hit with state safety fines? What is the ultimate cost of refusing to listen? Thank you so much for walking through this explainer timeline with me today. Keep asking those hard questions and always, always keep looking at the source documents.